Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe. Forget to give this video a thumbs up. For those of you that are looking to book mentorship, self-initiation mentorship, my website is up. It's www.safricpsychic.com. You can find the link in the bio. I think my email is also up. So I get, some emails. Dr. Tash, I've been through this and this in life, and I don't know now, what type of spirits I have. Please, can you tell me what spirits I have? I don't know what spirits you have. Right? You need to book a consultation. Okay, welcome back. Let's try to do a teaching. I don't know how this teaching is going to go. So this is a teaching for higher consciousness, okay? So obviously this is not going to apply to everyone. It can go over certain people's heads, all right? But if you into teachings, right, about higher consciousness, right, about the soul's journey, you are in the right space and place. It's very funny because I'm in a space, right, in my life where right now I have to teach people, right, and I have to mentor people through some of their spiritual journeys, right? And it's funny because I'm also getting certain clarifications, right, and I also get certain answers, right, about some of the things that I also had to go through on my spiritual journey, right, which nobody was really there to explain, right? But it's through seeing how some of my mentees or the people that I teach, how they're going through some of their journeys, that's giving me a lot of answers, also answering some of the questions that I had, right, when I was going through certain things. I don't actually know what I should name this, but I think the title is going to be Being Initiated by the Gods. So they agreed, being initiated by the gods. All right, so when we're talking about higher initiation, or when we're talking about spirit initiation or soul initiation, we are no longer here talking about ancestral initiation, right? We are not talking about ancestors. We are talking about realms, all right? We're talking about angelic beings. We are talking about, unquote, the gods, the realms of the gods. So I see there's a lot of misconception on social media. Wow. Oh, here's a white dove. I'm seeing a white dove outside. Okay, so my people are here. Anyway, they just put me off track. When we talk, right, about initiation, there's different types of initiation, right? And there's a lot of misconception even around the self-initiates or the self-initiation or people who are called to go through self-initiation. There's a lot of questions, right, around why do other people get to self-initiate, and why are other people put through traditional initiations? So these two people are missing each other, right? Because they're coming from two different sort of worlds, if I could say that, right? Going through a traditional initiation, it's sort of preparing you to be a healer. In the traditional sense. So at the end of a traditional initiation, you are getting called to be inyanga, ngaka, or you're called to be a shaman, or you are called to be a prophetess or mamusebelezi, or you are called to be a sango. That's what the traditional initiations are for. What about the self-initiation? When we talk about self-initiation, we are now talking about the soul. Okay, the soul. Most self-initiates are people who are called into soul initiation. And when we talk about soul initiation, we are no longer talking about ancestors, right? There's a point, right? If you started off your journey through an ancestral initiation, and you are called to initiate into spirit, or you're called to initiate into the soul, there's a point at which you need to transition, right, from the ancestral to soul initiation. So these two things are not really the same, right? Because I come across people, right, on social media saying things like, as a self-initiate, Are your ancestors going to teach you herbs in it? Are your ancestors going to teach you how to throw bones? And people don't really understand what self-initiation, right, is all about. Right? People who are called to self-initiate are called into higher realms of initiation, right, or higher realms of consciousness. And when we talk about this, we are no longer talking about ancestors, right, that are living on earth. Just like one of my mentees, this is someone that I know who's got Inzunza and Hosanna spirits. She says to me, always dreams, right, about being in a black space. All right. Hey Gogo, sometimes I dream of myself being in a black space. Sometimes I dream of myself in a black space and I'm seeing celebrities, right? Gibona Beyonce, Gibona Jay-Z, right, in this black hole, and I'm always passing them by. And in this one dream, I was told that now I'm being initiated by the higher gods. We're not talking about ancestral initiation. We are talking about being initiated into the higher realms of the gods, right? And why are you now being initiated into the realms of the gods, or why are you being initiated by the higher gods? One, because you came on earth to learn how to get back your godhood, how to evolve into a higher being. So your assignment here could be totally different, right? So it's not just about initiating for the sake of knowing herbs and knowing bones. No, some people are self-initiating because there's a different purpose, right? So there's reasons, right, why our souls are here on earth. So the self-initiation is not just about learning the earthly things, but it's also about learning the mysteries of the spirit and going through the mysteries of the spirit and spiritual things. Can ancestors take you through self-initiation? They 100% can. And there are some people, right, where ancestors have taken them from start to finish through their self-initiation to become traditional healers, right? I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking here about the soul initiates, right, who are on their self-initiation journey. Those people who are called to go into higher states of consciousness, those are a very specific group of people. One, they are reincarnated souls. So your soul has been here before. You've lived on this earth before, and you've had soul cycles, multiple soul cycles. So you have reincarnated into this lifetime, but you have lived before, right? Secondly, some of these people are born with a second soul. Some of these people are people who are highly connected, right, to the water, right? And they've got the spirit of water, right? Or they've got a gift of water. So these typically are the people who are called into higher consciousness. Now let's get back into the dream. My mentee says, I'm traveling through a dark space, right? And then I'm meeting different celebrities. What's going on, Dr. Tesh? Today we're going to teach just a little bit, all right, about the underworld. All right, I know it sounds a bit spooky. All right, so what's the underworld? The underworld, it's a hidden spiritual dimension, because, you know, here on earth we exist in the 3D, right? The 3D is where we are, the earth realms. There are other dimensions going up from 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10, 11, 12th dimension. All right, we also have the dimension of the underworld, all right, which is a hidden spiritual dimension. Others may call the underworld the realm of the dead. All right, so this is where many souls go after they die. So when you die, you're not necessarily going to burn in hell. No, it doesn't happen like that. All right, for people who are spiritually conscious, we actually know the truth, right? There's no hell, right, where you're going to be burning for 40 days and 40 nights. Right, but there is an underworld, and when many people die, all right, their souls go to the underworld. Not a place maybe where you're going to be punished, no, but a place where you're going to be waiting, right? A place where you're going to be resting, The underworld is also very much connected to the ancestral realms, right? So the ancestors go into the space, or their souls go into the space, right? Because remember what? The physical body dies, right? But the soul continues to live, right? And it lives within a different realm. Someone who is of higher ranking spiritually, part of the initiation is you actually traveling through the underworld. So the underworld is the layer of existence between what? This visible world and the unknown. If you're on the ascension journey, right? If you're on the real Christ consciousness journey, at some point, right, you're going to have to travel through the underworld. So I'll make an example about if you go back into my video, right, where I was actually talking about Jesus, right, and his journey into Christhood. There is a point, right, where Jesus had to undergo his sacred initiations, and there were 7 of them. So you'll have to go and find out and read for yourself, right? And one of the initiations before he got crowned to be the Christ, it was him going into what? The chamber of the dead. He had to go into the chamber of the dead. So Jesus literally had to conquer the underworld, or he had to conquer death. He had to conquer the realm of what? The unseen, the realm of the ancestral. And it was after he conquered this realm, right? You can go read the Aquarian, it's in the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, right? What I'm talking about. After he conquers the chamber of the dead, he then comes out, right? And then the Hierophant, which in this case was the Atlantean priest king. Other people say it's Thoth, right, from the Egyptian mythologies. Thoth then crowns him as the Christ. So the Christ, it is a title that is given to someone who has gone through their sacred initiations, someone who has conquered death, someone who has died, right? What? Spiritually, and come out and rebirthed into a new being. So it's an elevation, it's a frequency, it's a state, right, into higher consciousness. The Christ is not a physical person. So even Jesus has to go into the underworld and conquer death. The Bible teaches us, right, about how Jesus was nailed on the cross and then he resurrected after 3 days, right? That whole story right there where he had to conquer death and rise. They're talking about the spiritual initiation, the spiritual transformation. So those of you who are called to ascension, you can go back to that story of Jesus, right? If you understand what I'm saying. The underworld is a realm that is ruled by Hades, right? Also known as, right, the planet Pluto, which is very funny because it's also the planet that, you know, rules my star sign, which is Scorpio, right? So Scorpios are known to be like the phoenixes, right, rising from the ashes, right? So basically the Scorpios are masters, right, of the subconscious, right, of the unseen realms. All right, and that's why we are naturally very intuitive. We're naturally very psychic, right, and things like that. Underworld, you know, connecting to us, right, as the human being. The underworld is something that is connected to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, right? The subconscious mind, which actually rules what? Which actually rules the visions, the dreams, the intuition, memory. And this is why, for people who are going into their soul initiation, this is not a public initiation. The higher God's going to require you to drink goat's blood? Maybe not, right? But they would require you maybe to go through a spiritual death. They would require you to go through sacred initiations. So this is why with the self-initiation and people who are called into soul initiation, this type of initiation is not a public initiation. It's a very internal initiation because the work has to be done internally. The subconscious mind is also the mind that is connected to the water. The water also rules the subconscious mind. Water is also connected to the most ancient memory of this planet, of this universe, right? Even in the Bible, they said, "Let there be light," There was nothingness, but there was what? There was just water. The Spirit of God, or the gods, right? The gods, right? So one thing about the Bible, they omitted certain things. It's actually the gods, right? So the Spirit of the gods are the ones that hovered over the waters. So there was nothingness, there was water. So water is carrying the most ancient memory, right, of the universe. And this is why you're connected to the water and the water realms. All right. And this is why you will need to visit bodies of water, right? Because the water holds the most ancient memory. Okay. The subconscious mind is also connecting to very sacred spaces and places, certain mountains, areas, other places, sacred spaces. This is all about what? The underworld. So, Dr. Tash, why do we need to go through this underworld, or why are we traveling in this black space? Right. So, in order for you to transform, remember you are on the road to discovering the light. And one thing about the light and the darkness is that the darkness is part of the cycle of light. The darkness and light exist equally. Darkness cannot exist without the light. Light can't exist without the darkness, right? This is the typical, the yin to the yang. So you will need to travel through the dark spaces. You will need to do the dark work, right, before you can ascend into the light. Even Jesus himself had to conquer the darkness so that he could what? Become the light. So the darkness and the light, they work together. This is the divine order of the universe. Where there's up, there's down. Where there's left, there's right. Where there's good, there's bad. All of these things exist equally. All right. So I hope that you guys learned a little something about the underworld. The reason that you're traveling through the underworld is because you have to find your way out, transform, and become the higher being that you are. And it's not about always just learning muti and learning bones and things like that. Some people are here because they're here to help the earth and the universe. They're here to help the new earth, and they carry the codes to helping the earth and the world, right? So lesedi khanya makhosi ashe namaste ndauwe osana khanya. Bye.